Hey, y'all. I'm not going to lie. I'm still pissed. I'm going to do the best I can. This is going to be a quick, short one because I'm downstairs kicking off Christmas with my children who do not have school this week. The first thing and the most important thing that I could tell you about today is that later tonight, City Council, in its regularly scheduled programming, will be rubber stamping the opening and funding for, hear my words, this is important, funding for the Denver Christkindl market, the Christmas market that happens in Civic Center Park. Civic Center Park, which we recently swept and spent $4 million keeping the unhoused out of, only to spend more money sweeping them out of wherever they fled to after we spent $4 million blocking off Civic Center Park. We put up, insisting we don't have money to do anything for the unhoused, we put up a Christmas market. But now I know how. I've got the application right here. The vendor application is $5,000 for a single booth for craft or for food. There it is in the links. So my problem with this is that some will and have argued that the Christkindl market is supporting local businesses, that the Christkindl market is how we support Denver and, all of the rhetoric that you usually hear that's so noble about around small businesses. Well, I tell you what, I'm a small business owner and I do a lot of work with the Junior League of Denver, and we have a holiday mart, and we don't lie about what it is. It's a fundraiser for us to do more community work. We also don't charge $5,000 for a vendor fee. Vendor fees for a single booth are $5,000, for a double booth, $9,000, and for a triple booth, $13,000. Whoever has been here the longest and spends the most money on a booth gets preference because they don't accept all applications. So you need to hear that. Any business that has $5,000 sitting around minimum to invest in a booth space ain't hurting that much. So it's hardly magnanimous to be kicking out the unhoused in order to create a space for small businesses to sling their wares at Christmas time. This is not a magnanimous act by our government. It isn't. It's horrible. It horrifies me. And if it horrifies you, amazing. Please show up to City Council tonight. The Walla Moms and a whole bunch of other great mutual aid organizations. I'm really proud of everyone for supporting this. Originally, I had this idea, like if we could get people out there craftivating, then maybe we can get them to come inside and give us too. And if there is a digital gap for so many, and I know there is, Zoom doesn't work well on my phone, and you want to make your voice heard and you want to participate in some way, come in and speak on my live stream. I will make this as easy and accessible to everyone, but we've got to do both. We've got to be outside putting on Band-Aids and inside advocating for long-term changes so that we no longer need Band-Aids on societal issues like houselessness. So I'm begging you, come tonight and protest the damn Christkindl market. First outside, deliver all the mutual aid. We need coats. We need winter stuff. It's supposed to snow tomorrow. Bring all of the things for the unhoused. Drop them with us outside. And then at 6:30, please come inside and make your voice heard. Make sure your reps hear you. You can follow the Walla Moms in. All of them, most of them, thank you for tolerating that and me on this. And I get it. COVID's really scary. Mask up. No one's going to judge you for wearing a hazmat suit if you have to. I'm begging you, though, if you really want to see change in the community, this is where it starts. This is where it starts. You make things better for a short term when you hand them clothes, but we can make it better for the long term when we tell our reps to stop wasting our tax dollars on Christkindl markets. And that's not investing in small businesses, by the way. That's profiteering off of small businesses. And I have a problem with that. Hopefully you do, too. That is the big thing about tonight. I wanted to protest over the weekend. The Walla Moms protested on Friday. Thanks to everybody who showed up. They got kicked out. And the guards even said that they felt bad about it, which is kind of nice. So we want to keep calling out the hypocrisy and the bollocks of this Christkindl market in the middle of an economic depression. That's where we are. We are economically depressed. And we still have a pandemic going on, and rumor has it that the incoming president wants to shut down the entire economy for 6 to 8 weeks. And is that if that happens in order to control the virus, things are going to get a whole lot worse before they get better. So I'm telling you, got to come in and start yelling at City Council. You've got to. I'm begging you, please. There's one other thing I want to beg you to do, and I'm going to try really hard to keep my cool through this. When I put myself out there as protest mom, I've been open about this multiple times. I took a look around at some of the organizers, because the people who were doing the work in the community, the actual community leaders and the grassroots organizers, after 3 weeks of sustained protesting, they had to go back to work, doing the work, the amazing work that they do in their communities all the time. And those who were left out were either people who wanted to keep that energy going, some of them well-meaning, others were grifters. Either way, I'm not going to follow a person who doesn't know what the word kettle means, because if you don't understand the tools of the state, then you are just going to, I don't know that we're going to protest it effectively. I got 4 kids. It's not that I'm not arrestable. To a degree, I am. I have some privilege, but once you are incarcerated, your life changes and you give away a lot of your respectability and your credibility. And I spent 42 years building up all of the respectability that I could spend it effectively on this movement at this point in time that I wasn't sure I would see in my lifetime. So I made the active decision to instead become protest mom and start advising people on what security actually looks like, because I wasn't really seeing that around here. Advising people on how to, if you cannot be on the front lines because you are immunocompromised, there are other ways to participate that are just as valuable. And what overstating, I'm on the front lines of yelling at city council. Where are you? I'm alone on the front lines. There are plenty of people alone on the front lines helping that unhoused. Define the front lines before you shame people for not showing up to be there, because all of us are doing something. And when you think that your thing is more important than everyone else's thing, without seeing how it all comes together or how to utilize time effectively, forgetting that we got to survive under capitalism right now, which means a lot of us have to work, then fuck you. So when I became protest mom, I wanted to say fuck you a whole lot less. And I thought, instead of just being angry, I'm going to try to create the changes I want to see. I'm going to educate, I'm going to talk a whole lot, and I'm going to be that person at city council. And I'm going to beg people to come. And that is what the lane that I made for myself and have stayed in consistently since August, late July. Earlier than that, but after the decision to become public facing, whatever. When I said, and I put my initial post out there saying, if you don't have an emergency contact, you do now. There are 2. If you've never been arrested before, it's not a one call. You call the NLG, they're not a bail fund, right? You call the NLG on the way out to get your attorney afterwards, but their job is not to get you out of jail. You call the Colorado Freedom Fund, but they are not an emergency evacuation of imprisoned people. They only do bailouts a couple days a week, and we are grateful for those 2 days, not to minimize what they do at all, but they are not a concierge service for every person who wants to go running off to prison. No matter what you think you're protesting, no matter how noble that arrest may be, they don't work for us. They're volunteers, and we appreciate them. There are all kinds of volunteers doing incredible work right now that are overlooked most of the time in favor of the front lines. I'm on the front lines. Well, Elizabeth Epps is on the front lines of getting, and Eva Frickle are both on the front lines of getting people out of prison. What you doing? So I tell you that to tell you this. I watched those resources be abused and wasted last week in a way that I can't tolerate and won't abide. And then I saw something even uglier yesterday, which I have no time for. And this is why I want to talk about Bloc. When I put a post up a while ago, I'm going to go back and find it and share it again. When I see Bloc, I feel safe. Community defense is an integral part of defending the police. It's an integral part of building the new society that we want to have. It is exactly what we mean when we say we want people who know the communities to be effectively responsible for safety within the community, as opposed to policing. We want to get rid of policing as we know it. And that starts with the people who are brave enough to block up and show up and work together on a consistent basis. They are very good at what they do. And what never ceases to amaze me is that it's not the most privileged who are blocking up and coming out. It's the most marginalized. And why? They can recognize the threats. Their survival is contingent upon being in a group of people and sensing the one who has bad intentions, sensing the one who's a little too excited to be talking to, oh, you're my Black friend, you're my transgender friend. I don't have one of those yet, like you're a Barbie doll to be collected. Like someone who's too excited to be there as opposed to excited about you. So when Bloc shows up, they are showing up in community defense. A lot of them are, not all of them, but the vast majority, when they're showing up during the daytime, they are community defense. They are there to keep each other safe as well as the rest of us. If they approach you and ask who you are, If I'm your protest mom, I'll vouch for you. They will take, I know a lot of them. This is not unusual. When I started becoming protest mom, I was just trying to be that first line phone call for people who don't know anything other than the Colorado Freedom Fund and NLG. I will guide you through this process and help get you started. Especially if you can't afford an attorney. I've been arrested before. This is how I know. I bail people out. This is how I know. I've been doing this for a while. This is how I know. It's not that I know everything, but I know a little bit more than someone who has been through this before or only read about it theoretically online. A Google search is not the same as research, by the way. And the first wave of protest kids who reached out to me were people who are not native to Denver and wanted me to know that they weren't cops. So that as they got to know other people in the protest movement, that someone would have done the background check necessary to prove that they're not cops. And I did check them out thoroughly. I have a list of people, and you'll never know for sure. Do they act like CIs? Do they act like UCs? I can't say that I know everything, and I never will. But the people who said, vet me please, because no one here knows me, and I want to give you the information required that someone, because it seems like people trust you. And I've done that for people. Bloc, I know a lot of people, and Bloc has taken photos and said, do you know this person? Because they're being kind of a dick. And I've said, yes, I do. And you're right, they're kind of a dick, but they're not a cop. I've done that consistently over the summer. It's a little piece of my job that I volunteer for and I don't talk about, but it's a service that I provide because it keeps people safe. It takes a whole lot of privilege to show up on the behalf of an oppressed people, protesting on their behalf and refuse to give them what they need to feel more comfortable about your presence. It takes a lot of balls to say, I don't answer to you and run, but you might as well be a cop when you act that way. And worse, when you don't give them what they need to back off, especially if I'm your protest mom, especially if I know who you are, especially if you know who the people around you are, because you're familiar with them and you could diffuse it and you refuse to, then you are not only wasting community resources, you are wasting the generosity of the volunteers around you, keeping you safe. You are wasting the gift of Black Bloc. You are making it more dangerous for everyone there because you are distracting them and wasting their time. Do not waste community defense. Do not waste their time. It's not okay. I fired a protest kid this weekend. I've never had to do that before. I am so mad. How dare you show up with your privilege and say you don't have the right to question me? Knowing about the power divide, the power gap that exists between you and the people you claim to be protesting for. Knowing that Bloc is usually consisting of individuals in regular society you have power over because you can use that system and they can't, which is why they became community defense in the first place. How dare you? That is so ugly. I don't want to be associated with it. Told you I was angry. That's what I have to say about it. Think about what you're doing. The more privilege you have, the more you have to think about the consequences of your actions. That was what I meant in that thread specifically about the predator doesn't know it's a predator. It's just hungry. It doesn't care about the danger it is to everything else or the reverberations when it kills another animal. It was just hungry. Not my problem. When you show up and you waste resources and people get arrested because Bloc was busy following your dumb ass because you didn't feel like saying hi or de-escalating the situation, then you're acting like a cop. Cops are trained to de-escalate, but they are paid to escalate. You escalated a situation with community defense volunteers. You wasted the time and you endangered the people around you, and it's not okay. If you cannot play nice, stay the fuck home. The kids hear my yelling. I got to go back and put my Santa Claus face on. I hope you put your game face on. Don't worry, baby, everything's okay. I'm telling people just to not misbehave. Wait for me. Go outside and wait for me. I love you. Did you hear me? Do I need to speak louder? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So there's that. I don't like yelling at my kids. I don't like yelling in a way that they can hear it. And I know that I'm scary, but I need to be heard, and this needs to be heard because Bloc is magnanimous. They are marginalized individuals who will try to engage with you. It's not their job. It is not the job of the prey to try to be nice to the predator. If you've ever heard of CPTSD, which is what I have, one of the coping mechanisms that comes along with CPTSD, it's the fight, flight, fatigue, or fawn. Those are the four main responses. There are others, and they all start with the letter F. Mine is fawn. I was raised in an environment with a narcissist, and the only way to really bring his anger down to a point where I was safe throughout the 17 years I lived in that house was to fawn over that individual. No matter how angry you are, I can find a way to make it okay. And no, it's okay. This isn't about you. This anger says how incredible you are, how lovely you are, and how much you care. And I could de-escalate almost any situation I was in, other than forgetting to genderize yes, no, or thank you. So transgender individuals, if ever I've used the wrong pronoun with you, or I've used a genderized pronoun instead, I'm sorry that your trauma has bumped up against mine, but that was the source of a lot of my childhood abuse was not using a pronoun. And it's still not quite natural yet. I'm 42 and I'm still working on it. It's never intentional. So I tell you that to tell you this. If you find yourself defending these people, if you find yourself trying to educate them, I want you to really think about that response. It's not your job to do the emotional labor to educate every asshole around you. If you want to do it and Bloc is there to back you up, amazing. We saw a young woman having amazing conversations, was all captured by Colorado People's Press. Pay him, by the way. He's another volunteer doing really important work. Pay him. I'm going to put his Cash App link in here too. He captured that incredible. Now, that incredible conversation, that girl is brave, but you don't have to be brave in that way. That does not have to be your lane. It is not better to do this thing if you're not comfortable with it yet. And I would warn you that if you have CPTSD, which is very common in evangelical homes, it's in common in homes where you deviate in some way from the mean, particularly transgender individuals, you've had to fawn over the world around you. That was your coping mechanism, your control mechanism. That's how you de-escalated the danger that you faced. That was your brain protecting you because you are perfectly made and your brain is too, and that's all perfectly rational. But it's also work that you shouldn't have to do in this world once you've left that environment that was causing the ongoing chronic complex PTSD. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. Instead of wasting your time trying to engage and educate every predator around you, wasting your resources, I would beg you to take some time and read that book. I would beg you to follow Sam Dillon Finch. Sorry, I almost lost his name. Sam Dillon Finch on both Twitter and on Instagram and learn a little bit more about the dynamics of CPTSD, again, which I have. And because when you try to do that work and try to befriend people who are horrible to you, you might be doing really important work, but you might also be falling back into a dynamic that's really hard to disengage from of he's really mean, so I'm going to try harder. I'm going to do it differently this time. And you're going to go back in because you're going to make it about you and about controlling that situation instead of preserving and protecting yourself. And I'm begging you, if you are a blocker and you are out there protecting the rest of us, in between, please protect yourself too, because you are a valuable resource that I cannot stand to see wasted in this world. You're coached. You're loved. I got to go make hot chocolate and make my kids feel better about all the yelling this morning. But no one's going to feel better about the yelling I'm going to do tonight at City Council. My tax dollars paid for that shit. I'm not happy about that Christkindl market, and I'm going to tell them what I think of that. Hope you join me.